double check, man, just to let you know, just to make sure.
Darren lives on
Yes.
the Oak Ridge facility is on First Street.
The time is 7 o'clock, and we'll call to order the City Council meeting for July 8th, 2019. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mrs. Keller?
Here.
Mr. Browning?
Here.
Mr. Rohr?
Here.
Mr. Hellinger?
Here.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Here.
Mayor Riggle?
Here. Tonight's invocation will be led by Jackie Walker, Assistant City Manager, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll all please stand.
Thank you, Mayor. I realize this evening we all have a lot of things on our plates and things that we want to discuss or participate in this meeting. Just for me and for yourselves, be present in the next 60 seconds. Be present in what I'm going to say. And I hope you get a lot out of it. People are often unreasonable, irrational, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish and ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some unfaithful friends and some genuine enemies. Succeed anyway. If you're honest and sincere, people may deceive you. Be honest and sincere anyway. What you spend years creating, others could destroy overnight. Create anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, some people may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today will often be forgotten. Do good anyway. Give the best you have, and it will never be enough. Give your best anyway. Because in the final analysis, it is always between you and God. It is never between you and them anyway.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jackie. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Will you meet me down front? Up front?
You need this.
I hope they've already done it. Here's stop for that. For those of you who don't know, Jackie's retiring. In recognition of Jackie Walker on occasion of her retirement, I am honored to recognize Jackie Walker on the occasion of her retirement. Throughout her 27 years in public service with the City of Delaware, Jackie has impacted many projects, addressed public concerns, and encouraged employees to do their job with pride and positive attitude. Never was there a day that her door was not open for staff or citizens to voice their concerns for guidance. Each person knew that she would listen to them, provide them with answers they needed. She led by example and always said, "I have the best job ever." It's true. Jackie always put the city's best interests first. She never requested or sought out recognition for her hard work and always took satisfaction with the fact that people were happy when they worked and lived. She devoted her personal time to many events to promote the City of Delaware and took moments as an opportunity to make a positive impact and always found inspiration in the people she met. I am pleased to join Jackie's friends and family in thanking her for all of the hard work over the years to help Delaware to be a thriving community. I wish her good luck and most happy retirement. You have been a leader for us to look up to and a friend that we will never let go. Most importantly, congratulations for attending your last mandatory City Council meeting. Thank you so much. Your compass always comes back to Delaware. This is where your heart is, this is where your love. Sorry. I'm not crying. I'm not crying. Let's do it. Pardon?
GPS coordinates. Oh. Double that.
Okay. Item 4 on the agenda is the approval of the motion summary of the regular meeting of council held June 24th, 2019, as recorded and transcribed. What is the wish of council?
Move for approval.
Second?
I have a motion by Mr. Browning, a second by Ms. Keller. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Abstain.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Item 5 is the consent agenda. Elaine, if you'll please read this into the record.
Item A, acceptance of the motion summary of the Shade Tree Commission meetings held on February 26, 2019 and April 23, 2019, as recorded and transcribed. Item B, resolution number 19-29, a resolution appointing members to various boards, commissions, and/or committees and specifying the term of the appointments.
What is the wish of council on the consent agenda?
Move for approval on the consent agenda. Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Browning, a second by Mr. Browning, or I'm sorry, by Mr. Jones. Let me talented.
Second.
Yeah. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Item 6 on the agenda is time set aside for letters, petitions, and public comments. Public comments is for anything that is not on tonight's agenda. I understand that a number of you here would like to address the why, and I want to be very clear that the YMCA Recreation Agreement is the only YMCA item on the agenda. When the time comes, we will only take comments directly related to the Recreation Services Agreement only. This includes Mingo, the Jack Florence Pool, and city programming. If you have comments outside of the Recreation Service Agreement, as I've just explained, you may make them now during public comment. Council and staff will listen, respond to your questions via the city website as soon as the appropriate answers are gathered. We will not respond during public comment. You will only be allowed to speak if you've signed in on the council sheets, the council chambers, and you'll be limited to 3 minutes. And please do not repeat questions or comments or concerns, and personal attacks will not be permitted, or you will sacrifice the remainder of your time. So that being said, is there anyone that would like to come forward at this time?
I would. Oh, sorry. No worries.
And then for the record, you'll need to give us your name and address.
Good evening. I'm Jessica Feller, and I live now at 2237 Dates here in Delaware. I went ahead and prepared what I wanted to say tonight because I didn't know if I'd be able to make it through it. So with that, good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council, our staff and citizens. I come before you tonight in recognition of Jackie Walker and to express my gratitude for her years of leadership, support, and friendship. I'm not gonna cry, stop. Words cannot adequately express my appreciation to work for and with such a dedicated public servant. When I was first hired by the city back in 2006, I quickly came to understand the impact Jackie has had serving in various capacities. She is a trusted voice who always has the best interest of others at the heart of everything that she does. She was never so focused on a task that she lost sight of who the decisions impacted. She's a master at building relationships and meeting people at their level. It is because of this trust that healthy conflict could happen and results could be achieved. It's an understanding throughout the city operations that if something needs to get done, Jackie could do it, and she did. Having worked with Jackie over the years, I've gained a wealth of knowledge that has helped me to advance my career with the city. I've seen firsthand the professional and personal challenges she has faced and how she has persevered. She is strong, she is dedicated, and she is compassionate. I'm very fortunate to have been afforded the opportunity to work with Jackie and to learn from her. She has seen me through many challenges, professionally and personally, and provided words of wisdom and support. While I will miss seeing Jackie on a regular basis, I know that she will not ever be too far away. She will always be there to remind us of what we did back then and to encourage us to be the change that we want to see in this world. My wish for you, Jackie, is that you move forward into your retirement with the knowledge of how many people you have positively impacted over the years, and smile. From the big projects to the smaller behind-the-scenes projects and decisions you were a part of, smile for the good times, the hard times, and for the future that lay before you. Thank you for pushing me out of my comfort zone and challenging me, and it's been a pleasure and a privilege to serve our great city alongside you. Thanks. That's it.
Thank you very much. Okay. Would you like to come forward?
What? Yeah, exactly.
I know.
Hello.
Hello. You'll give us your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Amanda Kokenauer, and I live at 177 Schellinger Street here in Delaware.
Okay.
I'm coming to you all today to request that there be some social media roles of engagement bestowed amongst the council. And this is because of some squabble that has gone on the social media networks. And I have actually become victim of some abuse of power, perhaps, from Mr. Homan and the council, because they contacted my employer to imply disciplinary action be taken against me due to my opinions on a personal Facebook page that I have copies of here for you today, along with a formal letter fully explaining my complaint. I'm a private citizen. A private citizen has the right to articulate their opinions and ideas without fear of retaliation. They have the right to free speech within their social media networks. A private citizen is permitted to weigh in on political issues in any format or media. It is constitutionally protected. So Mr. Homan contacted somebody in my leadership chain at the YMCA, implying something be done about me and my comments on social media. It was specifically in response to a post on the Delaware Mamas in the Know page by one of your council members. The Facebook post had no context of the problems that were elevated to her for corrective action. They cited no specific points for the community to discuss and sparked negative emotions without just cause. The grievance brought forth by the constituents Amanda Matt, my personal Facebook page shared with my husband, was that Councilwoman had utilized her public spotlight to hurt an institution that spends every day making a difference in this community, instead of explaining to the public that this issue was confined to another issue, specifically the recreation contract with the Y. Now that that's been explained, I understand the problem. However, there was a lot of emotion and outrage that was sparked unnecessarily. And again, I'm thinking that having some sort of social media rules of engagement would help to prevent this. Nothing that a citizen does disagreeing with the council member should put them in a punitive situation with their employer. I'm sorely disappointed in this. Constituents should never be worried about losing their job over a simple disagreement. And if you allow these things to happen in our city council without repercussion, I feel that you are complicit in this oppressive operation, and the public is not going to stand for it. Social media policy should hold our representatives accountable to the values of this great city. The members should exercise caution with regard to exaggeration, colorful language, avoid creating guesswork for the public, and prohibit the use of derogatory remarks and negative characterizations. I recommend that communications be sent through the DelawareOhio.net formal webpage and shared that way so that personal opinions do not get confused with city council values and stances. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward during public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment. We'll move on to item 7, which is committee reports. Mr. Jones?
I have nothing, Mayor.
Mrs. Keller?
I have nothing, but I would like to remark back on the remarks that were made regarding social media. Mrs. Kokenauer, I'm very disappointed that it had to come to a point where we had to, you know, ask for decorum. And so you as a representative of the Y and me as a representative of City Council,
I am not a
the only
representative
thing,
of the Y, I'm a personal citizen.
the only thing
we
that,
need to stop this.
the only thing that was required was decorum. That's it.
I represent no one but myself.
Okay. Okay, do you have any comments for the?
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have nothing to report, thank you.
Mr. Rourke? Mr. Hellinger?
BZA meets Wednesday.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay, Sister City meets tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. And we'll move on to item 8, which is consideration of resolution number 1930. Elaine, if you'll please read this into the record.
Resolution number 19-30, a resolution authorizing the city manager to adopt a traffic calming guide for neighborhood streets.
Mr. Farino?
I have nothing to add other than we had one minor correction. We had 2 section 4.0s. Now we have a 4.0 and a 5.0, and this guide is ready to be adopted.
Okay. Any comments for Bill?
I think I had one quick one. The I know the 85th percentile is a national figure that's used, and I think I might have gotten this from you. There's streets in Columbus that are 25 miles an hour limit, but people drive 35 to 40, and that's customary. And I don't know if we're slower around here or feel slower, but than the big city. But perhaps that's a number we could look at in the future, for just for future consideration. Because I feel like, at least on my street and a few other streets, that 25 miles an hour, that 30 is still a little too fast. So that's all.
Okay.
Okay. Any motions?
Motion to approve resolution 1930. Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Jones, a second by Mr. Schaefer. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
No.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rourke?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. Moving on to item 9, which is consideration of resolution 1913. If you'll please read this into the record.
Resolution number 19-31, a resolution approving the traffic calming pilot program for West Hall Drive.
Again, I have very little to add over all the prior presentations. I think all the information's in the packet. A proposed pilot striping program is included in the packet, and we just recaptured some additional ADT data at around 2,300 vehicles per day. A little bit lower than the typical ones, probably because school's out of session right now, so we're losing all the trips back and forth to school. Average speed still 27.5 miles per hour. 85th percentile still ranges between 28 and 32, with the 85th being around 30 to 31 miles per hour, right where it has been holding since we've started checking these things for nearly a decade. So I can answer any additional questions regarding this. Should we approve a pilot study, then the striping package is included in the packet. That would be completed as part of our striping operations contract later this year, and there is funding available for that in this year's operations budget.
Any further questions for Bill?
Yes, when I spoke with Tom earlier today, I questioned as to what, if this pilot study were to prove to be effective, what would be the cost of performing the same level of striping to all those streets that we have identified as being a higher speed, higher average speed?
Thank you. I took a look at that. We have 8 streets identified with 85th percentile speeds above 30 miles per hour. I think I've shared that list with you before. If I looked at the total cost of doing a very similar type of improvement, which is around $2 to $2.50 per linear foot of cost, the total will be just under $55,000 in striping, doing a very similar approach to what we're doing on Hull Drive. That'd be for all of them together.
Okay, and that would cover all those streets that we've identified, residential streets we've identified with a higher average speed
Yes.
above
Correct.
what Hull was.
8
Okay.
out of the 15 streets. I will mention, because Executive Drive did come up, the 85th percentile speed is not above currently that threshold. But the Executive Drive, again, would be around $13,000 in and of itself. If we did something similar, we could always do less. We haven't studied any of these other streets in terms of what we would do exactly, but just throwing out some projections, I would say that $55,000 would cover a striping improvement similar to Hull Drive on all the streets that are above that threshold.
And does that striping also include a center line stripe?
Yes.
Or is it just the?
It's edge lines,
Okay,
center line
and
striping,
center
and some enhancements at certain intersections.
Okay.
And it's not an annual cost necessarily for the edge line.
Right.
Right.
We expect the striping, center line striping, edge line striping to last several years. Sidewalks and stop bars, we try to hit at least every 2 years, if not every year, on higher volume roads, because they do wear off quicker.
Is all that paint, is that the plasticized paint that would be put down, or is it just the?
It's just paint. If it was
Just paint.
if we had a road that's treated with this type of traffic calming, and the road is repaved, then we would put down thermoplastic,
Mhm.
and that would last a while. We just use regular paint now, traffic paint for these, and you'll still get some good longevity out of it in the low traffic impact areas. Again, be non-stop bar, non-crosswalk.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep.
Bill, given that this is a pilot project, what's our plan for follow-up and report back in terms of effectiveness?
We'll actually install the counters and traffic collection data like the week prior during the application and the week after to see the most immediate effect. Then put it back probably once a month for 6 months and gather the data to see what type of decrease in speed we might be seeing, and probably report back in no less than 1 year to council. Probably a 6-month report and then a 1-year report, and make a determination then how effective it is.
Thank you.
Thank you. What is the wish of council on resolution 19-31?
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Schaefer, a second by Mr. Browning. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
No.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
No.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. Motion carries. Item 10 is consideration of ordinance number 19-38. If you'll please read this in the record.
Ordinance number 19-38, an ordinance declaring the improvement to certain parcels in the city to be a public purpose and exempt from taxation pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 5709.40B, providing for the collection and deposit of service payments and specifying the purposes for which those service payments may be expended, and authorizing school compensation payments.
Good evening, Mr. Hughes.
Madam Mayor, members of council, good evening. We have before you and ask for your consideration the placement of a parcel tax increment financing mechanism over the Seattle House apartments that are to be built on State Route 3637, just across from Meyer. I think we can all agree that when you have the opportunity, it's best to try to get development to pay for development. In this case, we're looking to utilize a TIF mechanism to secure non-school revenues. This is a non-school TIF to direct that money over to the Point project. We estimate that this would generate about $1.2 million within a 30-year time period to help pay for the Point project. And it does actually follow all the criteria that were set forth by council in ordinance number 0555. And I'll go through those. The TIF proceeds are used for public purpose. For example, needed improvements to the Point in this case. The boundaries of the proposed TIF will not impact future opportunities to utilize other parcels for further improvements. This is not a district TIF for which those principles are set forth. This is a parcel TIF, so it only impacts the parcels that the apartments will be built on. Other TIFs can be placed around them. The road improvements will be completed within the 30 years of the proposed TIF. Hopefully Bill can get it all done before 30 years. Improvements funded by the TIF benefit the entire community. I think we can all agree that the Point project is a needed project for the entire community. Improvements are accessible with sidewalks and ADA ramps. Those are built into the plans for the Point project. This is a non-school TIF and therefore does not negatively impact the school district. Service payments will be collected as a whole, but the monies that are owed to the schools that they would typically get as taxes are paid back to them by us when we receive those service payments. Other agencies supported by property tax revenues were considered, but due to the nature of the TIF only being for improvements and not for baseline tax value, the TIF revenues have little impact. So any of the county agencies and whatnot will still get the TIF revenues off the ground itself at its current market value. The TIF only collects revenue from the taxes on the buildings. The city is the recipient of the TIF revenues and will be using them for public infrastructure projects such as the Point or the Central Corridor. If the Point were for some reason paid for in full, we have the ability to redirect the TIF funds to other essential transportation or public infrastructure improvements such as the Central Corridor project.
But the TIF has to stay in the realm of, if we declare it transportation, it has to stay in transportation?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it's principally really for the corridor.
Okay.
You know, with the Point and the contemplated work that we're looking at for East Central, the reconstruction of East Central and the improvement to that, it's really that entire corridor.
Yeah. And it cannot be used by the developer for anything that they're trying to do on the site itself. It has to be used for our public infrastructure improvements.
And you're I mean, you could, another reading is fine if you'd like. It is an ordinance. If you'd like to take it on the reading, we're okay with that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 11 on the agenda is consideration of ordinance number 19-39. If you'll please read this one, record line.
Ordinance number 19-39, an ordinance supplementing the 2019 appropriations ordinance in the amount of $10,000 and authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement to participate in a regional housing strategy.
Mr. Hellman.
Yes, this ordinance is the outgrowth of a meeting that the mayor and I attended a couple of months ago in the city of Columbus as part of our participation in the Central Ohio Mayors and Managers Organization and an appeal that we received at that time from the city of Columbus and other mayors and managers at that meeting to consider the regional housing study that the city of Columbus is embarking on. And with us here tonight are two individuals who I've worked with very closely about this, and I'd like them to come forward. William Murdoch, who's the executive director of the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, and Kirsten Carr, who heads up the Planning and Sustainability Division. And they, I think, can help provide an overview of the importance of this work and the importance of Delaware participating and why the financial contribution. So with that.
Great. And I hate to do this, but I need your name and address for the record. Sorry.
I understand the rules. I'm William Murdoch. My address is 421 West 8th in Columbus.
I'm Kirsten Carr. My address is 8266 Breesley Drive in Reynoldsburg, Ohio.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Mayor, members of council, and Mr. Holman. We appreciate the chance to talk to you about the regional housing strategy that we're doing. I should mention, too, we also appreciate the leadership and partnership with Delaware in the commission. Vice Mayor Schaefer is also very involved, Mr. Holman, and a number of your team members, so we appreciate that. What we're up to is a regional housing strategy to look at an issue that is hitting most Central Ohio communities pretty squarely in the face right now, and that's a need for housing in certain demographics, certain types of housing, certain strategies to deal with it. And what we're doing is, in partnership with Columbus, a number of private entities, foundations, and others, is we want to do a deep dive into the studies that have been done on this. We want to look at market gaps. We want to look at investment priorities and structural impediments. So things that are keeping the housing that the region needs to from being built to deal with the growth and the changes that we're facing. Out of this study, we're anticipating a comprehensive report, what we call non-financial strategies, regulatory strategies, metrics, and recommendations for the region. Of course, this is going to differ by community, and the reason that we wanted to engage the City of Delaware in particular is different parts of the region are facing different housing gaps and different needs, and this study will help to identify that. Everything from young professionals to senior housing to single-family housing to different types of housing that the region's workforce needs. So what we're looking for is additional partnership and support to make this possible. This is something that will move very quickly. We hope to have it done by early first quarter of 2020. And with that, I'll pause, and our Director of Planning and Sustainability and the lead on the study is Dr. Kirsten Carr, and I wasn't sure if you wanted to add anything.
I think just really briefly adding to it, you've heard the statistic for 2050 and how our region is growing significantly, and it's growing not only in population but also the type of demographics are changing. Our empty nester, our baby boomers are growing older. We have a large increase in our millennials and the generations coming afterwards. The BIA just did a study this year, released a study this year that you probably read, where we have a very significant housing shortage, which really brings up the prices in housing and rents. And so doing a study and being ahead of the curve as we continue to grow and wanting to be successful as a market to all types of people, we wanted to take on this regional housing strategy to come up with really good investment as well as policy and regulatory options, as William has mentioned.
Just one more comment. So when we say regional, this was a really important concept of the strategy, because certainly one community can address housing, but it won't solve the problems that it's trying to address, because housing really is a regional issue. The City of Columbus has been very emphatic. The rest of the communities are engaged. That's part of why MORPC is engaged. We have support from a number of communities as diverse as Dublin and Whitehall, and a number of other growing county seats like Lancaster and Marysville have signed on as well. So we're really anticipating looking at it from that 30,000-foot or regional view of what housing situations there are. But happy to take any questions.
So when we get this report, will we get the whole entire report, or will we just get Delaware?
Right, so great question. So as a supporting partner, there'll be a regional look at all the different gaps and recommendations regionally based on different submarkets and things. For the City of Delaware, we would zoom in on your geography and look at specific situations and recommendations that might be helpful for you, and certain gaps that you might need to fill.
But we'll be allowed to see what Columbus and Lancaster and everybody else has,
yes.
So that we may have similar problems that we need to tackle. And then my other question is, I know that BIA has done a study, and I understand that they're building houses. That's their business. I think what you're going to do is get deeper into it to see what people really need. They're just not the $500,000 houses. They're affordable houses, whatever we've determined that might be. And I think that's what I'm so interested in. So I understand that's what's going to happen, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
That's a really good point, looking at houses at all price points, understanding that currently, and you're right, affordability is such a subjective word, and people, depending on who you talk to, have a different understanding of what that means in terms of price points. But when we're thinking about the more vulnerable populations of our seniors with fixed incomes, we are lacking good housing with access to amenities. And that study is going to specifically look at that, how to preserve, protect, and then build more of that.
Well, not only our senior citizens, but depending on what your income is.
Exactly.
Our employers here, if they only pay $18 an hour, they can't afford a $200,000 house. That's the kind of study that I really want to see.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry to ask so many questions.
Happy to. And I know quickly I want to turn to Dave, because this does tie into our comprehensive plan, and there was an accompanying note in your packet regarding some conversations that Dave and I had about this, because it's something that the steering committee is looking at as well.
Yeah, obviously we're looking at all factors within our community while we're engaged in the comprehensive plan process, including doing some deeper dives into housing market analysis. I think William is correct. We can't look at ourselves in a vacuum exclusively. We also have to look regionally at what's happening throughout Central Ohio, workforce housing, affordability, all those kinds of questions. It doesn't mean we have to be all things to all segments of the housing market, but I think having good data produced at the regional level can only help enhance our comprehensive plan process and our understanding of our own community now, but also where we might want to go in the future. So I would recommend that we see fit to be part of the process.
Other comment?
Just a quick comment. We really have, the timing on this is great for us because we've had a lot of conversations about this, but we're kind of getting economies of scale here. If we tried to do a study like this on our own, we'd spend a lot more than $10,000 to get it done. So I think this is a great opportunity to get something timely and something that's going to be not only useful regionally, but particularly to us with the kind of information that we need. So I totally support this.
Any other comments?
I think it would be helpful to have the guidelines, and like Mr. Schaefer said, 10,000 is really much less than we would pay. And it would help us in our comprehensive planning decision-making also, so I see it as a win.
And I know this council's heard me say this over and over and over again, but when the new apartments move into town, to me, their prices are high, but it's just me. When Lisa and Jackie and I visited Austin, we heard about how the government helped, and these, I don't know if it's the government, they started a lower income for 10% of their apartments, and then another 10%. So they start at this level, and then they move up to this level, and then they can pay full price. I don't know how to help builders do this, and if you guys have any ideas, I would love to hear about it. I know we need to incentivize them somehow. I'm just not quite sure how to do it, but I think it could be done here in Ohio just as like it's done in other cities. So I don't know if that would be part of the study or not, but they would greatly be appreciated. So.
Thank you for that comment and that observation. The consultant team that we'll bring in, we of course need local expertise, and we're providing a lot of that, but we're bringing in a consultant who's done this in other regions around the country, who's faced similar issues. So they'll be able to look at that through the Central Ohio context, and we'll have some good recommendations on that.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And so we'll just take this to another reading?
Yeah, it's a first reading,
First
so
reading?
yeah, if you could consider it at the next meeting, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much for being here this evening. Item 12 on the agenda is consideration of ordinance number 1940. Elaine, if you'll please read this into the record.
Ordinance number 19-40. An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of bonds in the maximal principal amount of $12,510,000 for the purpose of paying the cost of refunding bonds previously issued by the city for the purpose of paying the cost of improving the city's southeast Highland sewer area by constructing and installing sewer lines, including the acquisition of interest in real estate together with all necessary appurtenances thereto, and declaring an emergency. Emergency clause. This ordinance is declared to be an emergency measure necessary for the immediate preservation of the public peace, property, health, safety, and welfare of the city, and for the further reason that this ordinance is required to be immediately effective in order to issue and sell the bonds, which is necessary to enable the city to take advantage of favorable interest rates and realize a savings in interest costs by refunding the refunded bonds, and to coordinate the sale of the bonds with other bonds of the city. Wherefore, this ordinance shall be in full force and effect immediately upon its passage.
Dean's over here, or Tom's over here saying, Dean's got all three of these. I said, no, he can have this one all by itself at first. This is a big number, Dean.
Okay.
And she can't read them that fast.
Thank you. This legislation authorizes the reissuance of debt for money that we had borrowed in 2009 to construct the Southeast Highland sewer. When we issued that debt, we had a call provision that said in December of 2019 we could call the bonds, meaning we could pay them off earlier. We're not in a position to pay them off in cash, but we are in a position, because of current market rates, to reissue the debt and see some substantial savings. Based on analysis provided by our investment bankers, the net present value of the savings over the remaining 18 years of the bonds, so we're still keeping the same maturity date of the original issue, in net present value is $1.8 million. So to us, that represents a reduction in debt service of about $143,000 a year for the next 18 years, which will benefit our sewer operation. Again, the timing's great. Markets look pretty good. Again, they can change at times, but none of this is new money. It's just refinancing an existing issue to save money. Entertain any questions you may have. We did discuss this at the Finance Committee meeting in depth.
Do you know how critical it is that we act quickly on this? Are you concerned about rate change in the next?
You never know, but right now the rates are pretty good, and certainly a bird in the hand's better than who knows what might be in the bush.
Any other questions?
And
Anybody want to make a motion to save 1.8 million?
Well, I'll make a motion to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings on ordinance 19-40.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Schaefer, a second by Mr. Browning.
Yes, suspend the rules.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes, motion made. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Move for approval of the emergency clause in ordinance 1940.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Mr. Browning. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries.
Move for the approval of ordinance 19-40.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Mr. Browning. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. Item 13 is consideration of ordinance number 19-41.
Ordinance number 19-41, an ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of bonds in the maximum principal amount of $2,500,000 for the purpose of paying the cost of improving and renovating City Hall and a related annex building and otherwise improving the site therefore, together with all necessary appurtenances thereto, and declaring an emergency. Emergency clause. This ordinance is declared to be an emergency measure necessary for the immediate preservation of the public peace, property, health, safety, and welfare of the city, and for the further reason that this ordinance is required to be immediately effective in order to issue and sell the bonds which is necessary to enable the city to timely enter into contracts for the construction of the improvement and to coordinate the sale of the bonds with other bonds of the city. Wherefore, this ordinance shall be in full force and effect immediately upon its passage.
Mr. Stelter?
This ordinance also authorizes the issuance of debt, though in this case it is new money, meaning there's not an existing issue outstanding. This is intended to finance the improvements that were made next door to the Cohatch facility, including the improvements on the second floor for the planning department, and also improvements to be made to City Hall to improve the security of the building and adjust for changed space. The amount listed is a not to exceed amount. Doesn't necessarily mean that's what ultimately we will borrow. That'll be based more on hopefully some updated cost figures for the improvements at City Hall. We have pretty much final numbers for the Cohatch building. The issuance of this debt was contemplated with our capital plan that was adopted last year. The intent to spread the cost over a 15-year period. As you recall, we are receiving rent income from the Cohatch facility that'll be used to offset the debt service that we'll incur over the next 15 years with issuing this debt. That's about all I had with that. I don't know if you had any questions related to it. From a timing standpoint, we don't have to adopt it tonight. I will issue it along with the refunding issue that was just considered, because it otherwise wouldn't make sense to have two separate bond issues going out, and this one would be a much smaller amount. But again, there's no criticality other than just moving forward, I guess, with the bond financing. Entertain any questions you may have.
Any questions?
We can move on it tonight, though, can't we?
Sure we can.
Then make a motion to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings on ordinance 1941.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jones, second by Mr. Schaefer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Going to abstain because I'm a member of Cohatch and do business there. So abstain.
Okay.
Mr. Browning?
I'm a member of Cohatch as well, so that just occurred to me, so I guess
You're abstaining too.
I'll think about that. Actually, it's just on the second floor on the bridge and here, so it doesn't, I'll vote yes.
Yeah. Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
I make a motion for the adoption of the emergency clause on ordinance 1941.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jones, second by Mr. Schaefer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Abstain.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Make a motion for the approval of ordinance 1941.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jones, second by Mr. Schaefer. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Abstain.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. And item 14 is consideration of ordinance number 1942. And if you'll please read this into the record.
Ordinance number 19-42, an ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of bonds in the maximum principal amount of $1,500,000 for the purpose of paying the cost of acquiring and installing a software system for use by various city departments, together with all necessary appurtenances thereto, and declaring an emergency. Emergency clause: this ordinance is declared to be an emergency measure necessary for the immediate preservation of the public peace, property, health, safety, and welfare of the city, and for the further reason that this ordinance is required to be immediately effective in order to issue and sell the bonds, which is necessary to enable the city to timely enter into contracts for the construction of the improvement and to coordinate the sale of the bonds with other bonds of the city. Wherefore, this ordinance shall be in full force and effect immediately upon its passage.
Mr. Stalver?
This is another piece of legislation authorizing the issuance of debt. In this case, it's money intended to be used for the acquisition of software. Another project, so to speak, that was contemplated over the last couple of years in our capital planning. And the intent, what was presented to council, was spreading those costs over the next 5 years. So this portion of the debt will be paid back in 5 years. The $1.5 million, again, is a not to exceed amount. Have a pretty good idea what the finance and HR application software will cost, as we have received proposals, and we're actually getting pretty close to awarding that. I bumped the number up a little bit because between now and when we actually price this debt, we may have a little bit better information on the police department as far as what they're perhaps going to do with their software. So I think this allows for that to occur. If for whatever reason in the next month or so we're not quite sure yet where that stands, we'll more than likely have another bond issue early next year related to the rec improvement bonds that we issued in 2010. Those likewise had a call provision that allowed them to be called in March of 2020. And again, barring interest rates going way up, we'll be able to obtain some financing savings by reissuing that debt. So if for whatever reason we don't have a clear picture on what's to be done with the police department's software, I'll just wait and then include it in with that financing. But so the number is, again, a not to exceed amount. What ultimately we borrow will be only what's needed.
Any
Entertain any questions you may have.
Comments?
This is part of that financing package. We're going to put all this together, these bonds, this one and the other two is all together.
Right, they'll all be rolled together in one issue. It'll be priced at the same time. That way it's a larger issue. It'll attract more attention from the markets, and I think we'll do pretty well with it.
Software seems to become obsolete so quickly. So it's going to take us 5 years to pay this back. I mean, are we going to be okay with this, or are we going to have to?
We use our software for, we exceed the curve.
Do we? Okay.
The last time we did anything with our finance software, and it was only a moderate upgrade of the existing software, was 10 or 12 years ago. So,
okay.
yeah, we'll clearly intend to be utilizing it after that. fact, the vendor that we're looking at has an evergreen clause saying that if they have updates and upgrades, we'll get those without cost.
And the police department is working off a piece of software that,
30 years old.
yeah, so it's time to upgrade.
Well, imagine we're buying this as software as a service, right? We're not actually buying a
That's
package.
one of the options that we're looking at is either to buy the software and store the data and stuff on our servers. They did bid an option that it is, we're able to put it out there in the cloud. If that's the case, the upfront cost will be less, but our annual cost will be more as we're paying for them to store and maintain and secure our data.
I move to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings on ordinance 19-42.
Second?
I have a motion by Mrs. Keller, second by Mr. Browning. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rourke?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
I move to enact the emergency clause on ordinance 19-42.
Second?
Motion by Mrs. Keller, second by Mr. Browning. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rourke?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Move for approval of ordinance 19-42.
Second?
Motion by Mrs. Keller, second by Mr. Browning. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rourke?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Okay, item 15 is council discussion items. So the first thing on there is the contract agreement for recreation services between the City of Delaware and the YMCA. And we're going to start off with Jackie. Since she's seen this from the very beginning.
Right.
She's going to give us an overview.
Right, thank you, Mayor, members of council. I have put together just a little note sheet, just mostly for myself, and obviously can be distributed to the public if they're interested. Just a little background. The following represents relevant background and summary of issues regarding the City YMCA agreement for recreation services only, not the community center and not the programs that are Y programs. In 2012, the City and the Y entered into a management agreement for recreation services, including the operation of Jack Florence Pool and the Mingo facility, as well as a number of other terrific programs that are considered city programs. And those are all on Exhibit A in the recreation agreement. That spells out not only what the programs are, but how much they are, the charge is allowed to be. Okay, so any change to that has to go through this body, to the fees. Okay, some of the more well-known: Harmony in the Park, Safety Town, the Halloween Party, the Easter egg hunt, adult softball, adult youth and triathlons, youth basketball, baseball, softball, movies at Mingo, the father-daughter dance, and mother-son hero superhero party. There are a lot more. I just hit on those. The agreement also included stipulations for the fees of programs, which I had said, for using the Jack Florence Pool, how much can be charged for memberships, and as well as the fields and the shelter houses. The recreation services agreement is different from the operation of the community center, and everyone needs to be very careful not to confuse the two. Since 2012, the city has negotiated fees. We pay the Y a certain amount every year to run JFlow, Mingo, and all the city programs. In 2012, for instance, it was $185,000. Then the Y gets to keep all proceeds from the programs that they run. 2015, it went to $199,075. In 2018, it dropped to $198,802, and the reason was for that was that Ted Miller had negotiated with the Y. Ted is our parks director, that the city would start handling all the reservations for our shelters. So that was something that they didn't have to do. So it did come down a little bit. 2019, the year we're in now, the City of Delaware, the citizens, are going to pay the Y $203,772. I believe that the Y staff, if they were any of them here when we started this. I was here working with the operations. The first year or so was a little rough, big learning curve, but we got past it. In 2013, we started with a new executive director that had complete control over the operations and programming for Recreation Services Agreement. And between 2013 till 2017, beginning of 18, the members and the citizens expressed overall satisfaction with these operations. It was not perfect, but the issues that did arise were quickly handled in a manner that was concurrent with how the city would have handled the issues had we been running those programs. At the city's request, the Y took on youth soccer, and many of you will remember this. We had citizens coming to us saying, you know, we just can't, we have 6-year-olds that just run around on soccer fields like a bunch of ducks, and we can't afford to pay the price that DYAA pays. The Y was very willing to sit down with staff, and we said, we need you to run a recreational youth soccer that is lower cost, volunteer coaches, and their response was, sure. So now people have a choice. They can go with a more competitive DYAA, or they can just find out if their 4-year-old even likes soccer and not have to pay, you know, $150, whatever it is, and pay $40, I believe it is. So that is just proof of the good partnership. At the end of 2018, there was an issue with regard to an incident with the Riptide swim team at the community center. However, that is an issue with the agreement to operate the community center, not the Recreation Services Agreement. Completely separate issues, 2 separate contracts. So we've had some recent concerns. I've heard, and many of us have heard on staff and elected officials, concerns through numerous media. I've had, there's people that have come to the office who have called me, texted me, sent me social media posts, things of that nature. Other staff have received these concerns, as well as a number of our elected officials. And I just want to go through and talk about those concerns for a moment. One is the website is confusing, and city-wide programs need to be better identified. We are definitely making progress with that. Is it perfect for everybody? Probably not. But is it better than it was a year ago? Definitely, in my opinion. Capacity at J-Flows, the lack of guards, and again, these are the reports that we were getting, and later Ted and I substantiated. Guards were texting from their chairs while they were on duty. The 1-to-25 ratio guards to patrons, which is an acceptable ratio, but you have to, you know, if you only have, you know, 6 guards on, that means only 150 people can get in. So it's important to have the full complement of 12. The SAC admittance issue, which you've been all copied on, we put it out there. That has been resolved. I believe the Y came up with some alternatives for the Y Day camp folks. We have documented water safety testing. There were some issues with the chemicals and how the resolutions were documented. This was also discovered by the health department, who also flagged the Y for this. The facility was not being secured on a regular basis. There was problems with the conditions of the pool deck, leaving non-Y staff to secure the facility in the evening, and lack of daily reports. The daily reports are important, especially to TED staff, because they need to stay on top of if there are any major issues coming down the pipe. Cleanliness, we received a number of complaints about the cleanliness of the pool, the 3 Seasons shelter, and the facility itself, the Mingo facility. There were concerns between communications between citizens, patrons, and participants. And then something that has nothing to do with Mingo, but it does have to do with the city program, is with youth softball. The program was realigned with a new league with little notification to the city and the public. Now, before I close, I really want to make this statement. It is that, however, with regard to the Mingo J-Flow issues, under the direction of Lolita Haverlock, who's here tonight, who's on the Upper Y leadership team, and an inordinate amount of city staff time, particularly mine and Ted's, dedicated to resolving these recent issues, I can say we're moving in the right direction for now. Me personally, I am cautiously optimistic that under the leadership of Tony Collins, the new CEO of the Y, we might possibly be able to salvage the rec services agreement, but that's yet to be known, and that obviously will be after my tenure. I think that's an honest appraisal of the background, the issues, and where we are now. And I'm happy to answer any questions or whatever you would like.
Questions or comments for Jackie? Okay, Tony Collins is here tonight. He's new to us. If you would come forward and give us your name and address for the record. Yes, please, to the microphone.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. Tom and Jackie, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me up, and I appreciate being here. Some of you know already or may have been heard that I joked to Tom. I said, I promised that when I left city government that I was done with city council meetings. 3 weeks in, and here I am. Yep. So welcome back. It's very exciting to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. I am new to this role, Mayor, as you mentioned, very new to understanding the situation. As soon as I was announced, I started to be briefed on our partnership with Delaware. I immediately called Tom and talked to Tom about connecting right away and understanding the situation and getting my feet on the ground and to listen. So we've had a chance to talk a couple of times on the phone, but we're actually scheduled to meet tomorrow to sit down and go through the list of concerns that you just shared. Excuse me. I do think that I have a good understanding so far of some of the things I've heard, but definitely need to listen. I need to spend some time listening. One of my roles, or one of my goals, as I just joined the team, is to spend a day every week in one of our branches and just hang out. And I'm looking forward to my day in Delaware just to hang out and pay attention and watch and learn and listen even more from not just the staff and the team, but the community members and the participants that are in our programs. So with that, I just want to tell you that the Y is committed to this partnership. We're committed to beyond all things safety. Anytime I hear about safety concerns, especially as a longtime aquatics professional myself, I start to tense up and look around. So we're committed to that, committed to the safety, the health, safety, and welfare. We respect the role that council has to play in making sure the citizens' concerns are heard, and we will do our best to make sure we get some resolution and put an action plan forward so that there's resolution and follow-up.
Great, thank you.
All right, any questions for Tony? All right, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And just to reiterate that tonight we're discussing recreation services only. Again, they'll be limited to 3 minutes. Vice Mayor Schaefer's going to time everybody. When his little bell goes off, you're done. No personal attacks, and I'm going to turn it over to George, who sits on this committee.
Okay, yes. Ms. Keller and I both sit on the advisory committee for the Y, and I asked this be put on tonight's agenda because of the ongoing issues that have occurred with this relationship and because of the different things that we're hearing out in the community. I've a couple people have called me directly and they're like, oh, the why this, the why that, and it's like, okay, let's separate this. As Jackie says, we're just talking recreation services here. There's a couple issues there that we have seen as sitting on this advisory committee and the council and city staff have seen over the period of time. Part of that being the ongoing change with management at the Y and the different people that are in place. I don't care. That's not my problem. That's their own organization. If they can't handle that, I don't care. I am beholden to the citizens of the city. I have no allegiance to the YMCA. You know, I'm not a representative of them. What we have seen, though, is issues with management from a very inconsistent, incomplete reports, having to go after them 3 months after a report's supposed to be. And then it comes back and it looks like somebody just threw some numbers together. Incomplete data. You know, supposedly they were going to track all this information starting last year according to our contract. And then they said, well, no, they couldn't do it until this year. I don't know if those reports still actually exist so far this year or not, asking for the data that we requested in our advisory committee meetings. You know, operations, Jackie has brought up several of those operational issues. The biggest thing is the personal safety and the risk management. Again, if you're not locking the gates at night, hello, who is manning the operation? You know, do we have an 18-year-old kid there trying to play supervisor? I don't know. And it's not for us to do, but it reflects on us, and heaven forbid somebody comes in there and skinny dips in the middle of the night or something, and you find a dead body in the morning. Those type of issues, which are personal risk issues, cannot be tolerated. The reason we entered into this agreement with the YMCA is because the YMCA was supposedly the star. They knew this. They were professionals. They could do a better job than we can. That's what we bought into. We're not seeing that. I'm not seeing that. We continue to have these issues. So wanted to bring that out. One of the biggest things, and the biggest drum I've beat for the whole time I've been on council, is nobody knows who's who. If you're a contractor, the YMCA is functioning as a contractor for Delaware Recreation Services. They should be branded as Delaware Recreation Services. They should not have Y paraphernalia on. I don't care. If you're providing a service to my company, or in this case, to the city, you need to represent the city, and it shouldn't be, oh, geez, well, why am I talking to this guy at the Y? And we see that as a lot of confusion in the community. Is this a Y program? Is this a recreation services program? Who is this person? I talked to this guy at the Y yesterday, and I'm talking to him here, and he has a Y thing on, but he says it's a recreation services thing. It's very confusing. That definitely needs to get handled. It's not handled, and again, I think, you know, I'm looking at it from a citizen standpoint without regard to the YMCA, because I owe no allegiance to them. They're a contractor. They're paid to give a service, and you know, that's why I wanted this to be on the agenda tonight. So wanted to get it all out here so people understand, and there's not misconceptions as to what it is we're trying to do. That's all I have.
Okay. Ted, do you have anything to add before we open it up to the public?
No, I think it's pretty much been summed up there.
Okay. Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to come forward with any concerns on recreation services? Okay.
That'll make it a lot easier. Yeah, I just want to, it's okay?
Mm-hmm.
Make a couple of comments. One regarding the comment that was made by Mrs. Kokenauer at the beginning of the meeting in regards to her interaction on Facebook, and my conversation with Ms. Zingali, the branch director, in regards to that. I didn't think, and I still don't think, it was inappropriate for a employee of the Y, as Ms. Kokenauer is, to be conducting herself in that way. Whether that, I understand the right of her, the free speech issue, I get that, and if that's the way the Y wants to handle it, that's fine. I just didn't think it was appropriate, and I think it was undermining what we were trying to accomplish, which was to at least through the social media, Facebook page that was commenting about the issues at the Y with respect to the aquatics program, that we had some issues and concerns about that. And Councilwoman Keller's post was that we need to get some answers and that we have concerns. And I can tell you, both as a representative of the city, but also as a member of the Y, I've been a member of that Y since it opened, that we have concerns. And so that's what ultimately we're trying to address here, is how to take a look at this partnership that we explored back in the mid-2000s and that we entered into in 2011, to try to figure out whether that's the right model for today, because that's really what we have to look at. We are in the middle. We're going into the third year of our agreement for recreation services. We re-upped in 2018. We're almost at the end of 2019, and we have one more year. Then we have 2 one-year renewals. I think this is a conversation that obviously I'll be having with Mr. Collins tomorrow, and some follow-up. And it's also a conversation I think we want to have with the Y Advisory Committee. The partnership has undergone it's undergoing some strain right now, and it's difficult for the community, it's difficult for all of us, and I would like to see it addressed and repaired if we can. We can't obviously do that. We cannot do that at this meeting, but I'll be working to see that we can hopefully come back to council and the Y Advisory Committee with some recommendations. If you take a look at the rec services agreement that's in your packet, and you take a look at the recitals, the operative whereas clause that we established back in 2010 when Paul Weber was here and John Bickley as the president of the Y we believed at that time it was in the best interest to contract with the Y for these services. And that's really what we have to address and understand, are all of the resources being devoted to making sure that agreement is upheld, and that they're performing the work that they should. I look forward to the dialogue and to hopefully being able to report back to City Council and getting the committee together. I'm encouraged. I know Tony professionally. I know his reputation. He has a strong background in municipal recreation, which I think is an added value to us in this relationship because he understands the interplay between a municipal recreation program and the YMCA. So I think that'll be helpful. So I'll look forward to our meeting tomorrow and a follow-up, and be happy to answer any questions that City Council has.
Would you mind after your meeting with Tony just sending us
a summary? Absolutely.
Yes. Keep us up. Okay.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I had a proposed possibility of a solution that may get us somewhat closer to working better as partners. I wanted to just leave it up to Mr. Collins and Mr. Homan to possibly see if maybe it was even an issue. But part of the concern being a council representative is that we get complaints from people, we're accountable, but we don't have any of the management authority to say this needs to be changed, or we're just kind of at the mercy of whatever's happening. So when we get phone calls like the gate at Mingo's being left open, or lifeguards are not paying attention to the pool, we have all the accountability, 100%. And on this particular day, I happened to be downtown in our city and was literally bombarded with emails, people coming up to me. And so at that point, what can we say as elected officials? So as a possible solution, I'm thinking that if there was some sort of shared leadership model where there was a director of Delaware Recreation, and that employee had both ties to the city and ties to the Y, similar to what we do with our school resource officers. Then we have a true partnership where that person would be a city director that would sit in these meetings and be a representative of the Y. That way, they would have both of those perspectives in the decisions that were being made, instead of the legislative body sort of being at the mercy of whatever our contractor decides to do. And sometimes we are happy with those services, and other times we're not happy with those services. But we're always accountable for those services. And I think that's the issue. So that's my proposed solution, is to explore if that might even be an option here.
There's your first topic tomorrow. Thank you.
Councilman Hellinger, it sounds like most of the problems are around the pool. Is that, or the other programs listed, were there any other issues that came up, or is it pretty much pool related?
No, I mean, at this time of year, we hear everything about the pool. But just like we heard in the wintertime, we were hearing issues about use of the Mingo facility, you know, the basketball courts, and issues surrounding that, and you know, how those resources were used, and when people could play and when they couldn't play, and you know, different things like that. So no, I would not say that it is a pool issue exclusively by any means. I think there's a number of different elements there.
We've also been contacted by Little League Baseball. There was one other one that contacted us. Little League Baseball. Tom, who am I forgetting?
That was, it was baseball, softball, and pool operation.
I had pickleball contact me, but.
Yes. So we've been getting lots of, and so maybe just as an example, they say, we want to have Little League Baseball, but the Y told us no. Now, I don't know if that's true, but then I'm sort of stuck with, well, I'm sorry, you have to talk to them, and they're like, but I'm angry. And normally, when someone contacts us and says, I'm angry about this pothole, we're able to contact the city manager and say, please help me. We go out and we fix it. But in this case, we're sort of turning everything over, but yet we're accountable for the anger. And that's a tough place to be in as an elected official.
Okay, so we'll look for the report back. Any other comments before we move on to the review of rules, suspension guidelines? Yeah, we're done discussing that. I don't know, they're looking at me. So, who wants to start on this rules thing?
I think this came up at a previous council meeting. I think there was a request that we review how we and when we suspend the rules. We established some guidelines a number of years ago, which were included in your packet. There's also a background memo from Dave. He kind of updated his comments. When is it appropriate to suspend the rules? This comes up a lot in land use cases, and that's why Dave put together his kind of summary of under what circumstances you might consider the rule suspension. It is pursuant to our charter. There are communities that have amended their charter to only require 2 readings. We considered that the last time we did the charter changes, and the Charter Commission recommended to keep it the way it is, and there's a reason for that. I mean, 3 readings sometimes, depending on the issue, how controversial it is. It's necessary to take it out that many. That's 6 weeks, and in some cases 6 weeks makes sense for certain items and it doesn't for others. But anyway, that's just kind of framing the issue, and I know that this had been requested, I think, to be looked at. So, but I don't know if you want to.
Chris has asked about it.
What's that?
About this.
Yeah, I'm just curious from Dave's perspective. I mean, where do you think that the biggest wrench is? And I mean, if you could wave your magic wand and say, okay, we don't want to do, we're wasting our time going to 3 readings on, you know, I know it's like typically on a plat
Like a
issue
plat.
or something like that. Is that, I mean?
Yeah, I think I tried to draw a distinction for you between legislative acts, things that are considered legislative acts, and things that are considered administrative acts. You act on ordinances all the time, which feel like they're legislative acts, but in certain circumstances under development reviews, you are ending in an ordinance, but you're acting in an administrative capacity, kind of acting as staff. And those are things like plats. Those are things, could be things like final development plans, or even preliminary development plans. You're acting more legislatively when you do a rezoning, you do an annexation. The one that's kind of in the middle is a conditional use permit, which is really technically an administrative act, but it's kind of in the middle there. You're having to balance a lot of issues, and those can often be controversial, as we know, as well. So one of the things I would do to wave a magic wand is to try to make the guidelines, whatever you want them to be, obviously, but try to make them reflect more of this difference between things that are legislative and things that are administrative acts. So we could, obviously, it's kind of hard to talk about that in a generic like this. Hopefully you get an idea, but we could try to put an update to this, if you like, together with the law department.
Helpful.
And let you take a look at
Like
it,
a
and then
list
you
of what's
can
considered legislative, what's considered,
accept it, reject it, change it,
Yeah,
whatever it is.
right.
Yeah, kind of a matrix type thing.
So Dave, did you draft this that we have before us tonight? It's kind of a starting point.
I think that was
Which
really.
That was done by
part of it?
Darren a while ago.
That was
that was the
Darren,
old
yeah. That was with
policy.
input, yeah.
I think that's existing.
Yeah, that's existing, yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I think you
So
were.
that was going from kind of nothing to the something that we have now, and then maybe lessons learned over the last few years. It's time to take another look at it and maybe accelerate some of the processes that are more administrative and not controversial, if that's your pleasure, over ones that are legislative and just require public hearings, you can think of it that way, as well, that are gonna take at least 2 readings just to conclude the public hearing.
I think the tricky part with this is just striking the right balance between letting the public know and being very open with what we're doing and getting things done expeditiously and trying to weigh those 2 things. I know one of the criticisms I hear a lot is, well, I didn't find out about it until it was already over. I would love to see us put our agendas, when we have a council meeting, making it so that it's really easy to find and so that the public isn't kind of caught by surprise after the meeting already happens and
Did
it's
you
in the
read
newspaper.
Lee's email today?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, the changes that we're able to, to make, and we're putting our agendas on our Facebook page now. So all of these things are helping to get the word out. So if we can adjust, my only concern was if we have guidelines, we should follow them. If they're not appropriate, we should update them, and then we should follow the updated ones. But I was feeling like we were kind of starting to make it up as we went along.
Well, and one of the issues, actually, I see 2 points here. One is from when we put out our agenda on Thursday for a Monday meeting, that does not give much time for, if you're going out of town that weekend or whatever, you come back in town Monday, you haven't even seen it. If you're a citizen and you're trying to keep up, what have you. I think we should publish we should have more lead time between the time we publish our agenda and we have our meeting. I think we should actually do it a week ahead. That'll push things back a little bit, but you know what? And especially when you look at, most things, a couple more days isn't gonna matter. And definitely land use cases, which are huge, because land use decisions are basically in perpetuity, or at least 20, 30, 50 years in duration. So you know what? If they have to wait 2 or 3 months, it's not a big deal. It may be a big deal to that developer, but you know what? Considering that the city then has to live with that outcome for the foreseeable future, they can cool the jets, in my opinion.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
just a comment on a couple of those. One thing to keep in mind with all land use cases, many communities don't have final subdivision plats and final plans even come to council.
Mm-hmm.
Many communities have them end at planning commission or even end at the staff level decision. Those are, again, administrative type acts. Yet, so one thing to keep in mind as you consider your policy is to remember that everything, say, almost everything, that starts in land use has been vetted through staff through usually a series of months, if not sometimes year plus, in accordance with our codes, past decisions, consistency, et cetera, our comprehensive plan. But then also through your planning commission, who's tasked with really looking at, as many of you know who've sat directly on it, at kind of the gory details of every case. And then you asked me if I wave my magic wand. Sometimes I think to staff and to an applicant, it feels as if then when we get to council, we kind of start the process over again sometimes. Now, for 95% of the cases, no. I don't think it feels that way, but certainly for the tough and controversial ones, it does. I'm not suggesting that you change your role in any of that, but it's just something to consider that there's been months of process, if not sometimes years of process in advance of that. And hopefully, if we've done a pretty good job as a collective staff, we've elicited a lot of those comments ahead of time. We know what the issues are, and I think we generally do. Even in the controversial cases, we may not agree, but we know what those issues are. And then unfortunately, you have to wrestle with the answers to those.
Yeah, I think Dave brings up a good point because, you know, with my years on council, it's everything that comes in front of us at that point, there's so much due diligence that's already been done, everything's been looked at, and then when it comes to us, it's really just, you know, typically it's a conversation about mounding or something like that. It's never, you know, the serious, you know, in the weeds type stuff, which has been done for a long time. I know for me, it's been, you know, with a new subdivision, I always want, you know, 2 ways in, 2 ways out. And I don't know the last time that I think staff has probably taken that into consideration. I don't think we haven't seen one of those in front of us in a long time that didn't already have that. So I think staff knows, well, Councilman Jones is going to want 2 ways in, 2 ways out. So that's taken care of ahead of time. So
I beat him up at planning over that every time.
Yeah, yeah. And again, that's a good point. It's been the planning. It's been seen by eyes. It's been seen by Dave's eyes for a long time. And I agree. Sometimes I think when it gets to us, all of a sudden we sit in the back to day one for no reason.
Would you want us to come back with perhaps some revisions that?
I mean, for me, I mean, I hate to put, you know, more work on Darren and Dave, but I'd love to see, like, you know, this is what they think it should be. This is what it should look like, and then we can kind of nitpick it from there, because it's his department, and you know, it's staff's headache, so to speak, on this legislation, on the reading. So.
Because typically, George, to your comment, when it goes to planning and then it comes to us, we very rarely approve things on that first reading. So it's still going 2 more weeks usually to the next council meeting before we're even talking about rule suspensions, in most cases, right? So delaying that even further seems cumbersome.
Yeah, that's kind of what happens today and in the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, I'll say. When I first got here, I think the process was maybe even slower yet in terms of the amount of time it was taking even to get it on a council agenda. And then for a period of maybe 10 years in there, there were a lot of first reading suspensions for administrative type acts. So it's varied through the years.
I think the biggest issue on this side of the dais is typically it's always development issues. I think we're all on the same page when it comes to monies, you know, raises and, you know, hires and stuff like that, or, you know, Bill wants to sell you know, his equipment. I really don't see the sense of going to 3 readings on something like that. You know, it's something you pass that night. So I think my opinion, the only changes are really development oriented, which I think can be improved.
That's where I think Dave could help us give us
Yeah.
guidance, a better guidance on that.
I agree.
And that includes zoning changes
Yeah.
and anything
Yeah.
like that.
So maybe the first meeting in August, if that's okay?
That's fine with me.
They give us a little bit of time. Dave, I'm looking at Dave.
It's like-
He's got vacation, I gotta.
First or second meeting, I'll get with Dave and Chris and Darren on it. We'll
Great.
follow up, back before you.
Does that seem doable, David? Look, your
Yeah.
expression is like.
Yeah, I
Do you
think
want us to push it back
whether
some?
it's first reading in August or whatever, I think we just need to get back draft to you for consideration. Obviously, after legal and even some of the other development departments that touch development have an opportunity to look at that as well.
George, I'm surprised to hear you say that you want the agenda a week ahead of time.
Well, I think if we want to get it out if we want the public to know what's on the agenda, and I agree with what Lisa said, and that, you know, what you hear back from people is, I didn't know that was even there. Now, it's a bigger issue than just publishing the agenda ahead of time. It's getting it out there and you know, getting it visible in whatever manner that is, whatever vehicles we use. But again, if you publish it on Thursday and you meet on Monday, you know, most people aren't sitting around looking for things to read about public operations on the weekend. You know, so I just think if we could back that up some, and you had people, because I think most people try and do those type of research things during the week. And you would have, as opposed to 3 days, you would have, you know, 5 or 6 days to view that as a concerned citizen.
We do post, like, for zoning changes, those signs go out.
Yes, oh yeah, right. But I think, I mean, this is not necessarily development specific at all. I mean, it could be about, well, you know, anything that we discussed on tonight's agenda.
Circuses.
You know, it could be whatever that is.
If you think about it, with most of the stuff, especially where there's gonna be public hearings for public input, that's not gonna happen till the second reading. So even if they miss it, because I know that it takes a lot of work to get it out by Thursday. You know, we have to meet on Monday, we'll take a look at what's coming from planning and make sure those get on there in a timely manner, and staff has to get their stuff. I mean, getting it out by Thursday takes a considerable amount of work. But if it's something that the public's interested in, we're not gonna act on it in the first reading on those big ones, the zoning and the, you know, those kind of things. They are gonna have public hearings and so, I mean, even if you miss that first one,
Right.
you're gonna be able to say, well, geez, I missed that one, but now that was the first reading, so now I know it's coming up in 2 more weeks.
Yeah, but see, I think that's where the disconnect lies. We know that, but I think unless you're in tuned and have attended, you know, multiple meetings and really know what's going on, you don't realize that, oh, this has to come back for a second reading, or, you know, and if it is, they're gonna talk about it, you know, 2 weeks from now. I just think we need to get more visibility out there in whatever manner that is, so that people know what we're discussing. You know, along with that, and I've brought this up before, when we look at minutes that we post out on our website, we never post our minutes till after they've been approved. Sometimes, you know, if it's the airport commission and they miss 4 months in a row, so now you're looking, and by the time they get approved, now it's 6 or 8 months later. I think we should be posting our unapproved minutes, and then we can update them when they're approved. Because if I wanna see, again, something that hasn't been approved yet, I have to wait 2 months to see what planning commission did. Because, you know, they haven't approved the most recent one yet. So I think that also would help, just getting that information out in a timely manner, and then somehow putting big balloons and wavy flags and whatever on it to make certain that people are aware of it.
Here's the one thing about people being aware. I know I got between 50 and 100 angry emails about the YMCA, but there wasn't a single person here. People are communicating with us differently than 50 years ago, when if you wanted to communicate with your city council, you came and spoke. It's non-traditional now. There's a lot of non-traditional communication, and so I think we have to adapt to that also and collect feedback for our meetings electronically. And maybe we have an electronic feedback portion where we say, we collected feedback in this way and these were some of the comments, and incorporate that so that we're gathering that feedback from the public, but not necessarily expecting people to come at Monday night at 7 o'clock and come to this intimidating podium and speak.
Well, there are people that will send emails to Elaine and then they'll get read here, so I mean, that is the way we do some of the stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will wait to see
Yeah,
what you
well,
come up with.
provide that in August. And hopefully the first meeting in August, we'll have a draft for you to look at.
Okay.
The question is, do you want to end your meeting with a review of ethics, or would you like to?
I need to leave, so.
Oh.
So my card is not
That's fine, we can take it on to
Our office, though, just for your future benefit, we sponsor an ethics and public records training every year at the Willis Building, and you're all invited.
Thank you.
All elected officials in Delaware can.
There you go.
Let us know the times.
Sounds like a party.
So is Chris off the, is Chris Ballard off the hook time?
You're off the hook, Chris.
No offense taken.
Okay, then let's go on to item 17 and do city manager report.
A couple of items. I'll be out of the office beginning this Friday through the following Friday on vacation. Dean will be acting city manager during that time. Kyle Kreidler comes back from his 2-week paternity leave on the 15th. So he'll be rejoining the city staff next week, having spent 2 weeks off with his newborn. I was able to.
So you're going to be gone, and Jackie's going to be gone, and Kyle's gone?
No, Kyle comes back on Monday.
Oh, this coming Monday. Okay, good.
The 15th. Yep, and Dean will be acting city manager, so. The council prioritization, I was finally able to connect with Jane Dockery regarding that. I got some input from Dave. There were a couple of land use questions. This is from the council retreat. So I'll be getting that information out to you before, as part of the next meeting packet. So you can identify priorities and strategies that we talked about at that retreat that'll hopefully inform us for the upcoming budget session. We received a number of very nice letters, which I'll have Elaine provide you, from the students who were part of the OWL program. They use council chambers for their mock trial program, and they were very, very appreciative of sitting in these seats as part of their OWL camp program. So I'll forward those on to you. Bob Horrocks retired, and they are having a function for him this Thursday. I'm going to try to make it down there. I know, Lisa, you had mentioned you're going to try as well, so hopefully.
I think it's 4 to 7.
It's kind of a drop-in.
I'll be going earlier.
Yeah, it's a drop-in. There's also a age-friendly initiative event tomorrow night at Source Point that I'm going to try to attend that they're holding, so I will not be able to attend the meeting for the Sister City
Are
Committee.
you going for that whole meeting?
It's
Source
actually,
Point?
yes, it's a presentation.
Okay, well, I got 3 things,
Did
so
you
if
get-
you'll cover one and he'll cover
Yeah,
one,
I'll
and I
do-
can cover one.
Yes, I'll do Source Point, yes.
Okay.
So that's that. Hats off to the entire City of Delaware team, fire chief, police chief, public works, and all the others for the outstanding fireworks display. The fireworks were great as usual. The weather held off. I don't know who put the word in, but in the morning, I think it was kind of touch and go, but by the evening, it was a great evening.
In Lee.
In Lee, of course, yes.
He raises all the money.
Yes, yes. And to our sponsors.
Yeah, oh yeah, our sponsors.
Who've helped us make it over the goal line for that. And then finally, I want to just publicly recognize Jackie and all the time that she has spent as a dedicated city employee, as the assistant city manager for the last several years, and before that as an assistant to the city manager. She has just been a pleasure to work with. I will miss her dearly, and you've set the bar very, very high, and I really I mean it when I say that you're a special person and a very, very special public servant, and it's been a privilege and an honor and a pleasure to serve with you all these
That
years.
means the world to me. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much, and all the best in your retirement.
Thank you.
Okay. Council comments?
I have a couple.
Okay.
I got an email from actually 2 constituents just asking us to consider, or at least get back to them, the reason why our 4th of July parade is so late in the afternoon.
I can answer that.
Their comment was that it kind of screws up everybody's plans for, cookouts and stuff in the afternoon, and also the heat and everything. If we could consider doing it in the morning, I don't know.
I have asked to do it at 10 or 11, but because the police, they're ending at 3 and beginning at 3, somebody would have to have a 15-hour day and it'll cost us a lot more money. I've asked every year for this. Here we go, Chief.
It's not even that, but it's a long day already, a long hot day, and the guys are outside all day. It's just logistically hard to do. I have, the past couple of years scheduled everyone on duty July 4th. No one's scheduled off. It's a work day on July 4th, and we're still short traffic positions at the end of the fireworks. So
It's fine by me. I just want to be able to give an answer back.
It's a tough day for manpower for the police department. We don't have a holiday.
Yeah, well, that gives me the answer to reply.
Well, Sunbury does theirs at 9, Ostrander does theirs at 10, and then ours is at 3. One year we did it at 11.
When the machine was here, we stretched things out even further, but it was a struggle with and quite frankly, if you were there this year and you saw that crowd, I mean, it's getting bigger every year.
It sure is.
Orange Township, I don't think, is having their fireworks. We're drawing more and more people, and it's not just the event area, it's outside. So we're running on calls inside the event area, outside the event area, and then trying to manage traffic and get through traffic to handle calls. We need everyone we have, and it's just, I hate to say the word convenient, but being able to do the parade, I have 2 shifts that overlap, and I bring one in a couple hours early and work one over a couple hours, and then I have my midnighters come in a couple hours early, so we can have double coverage throughout the whole day.
And if I could just add one thing, Chief, to what you're saying, is that keep in mind that's just July 4th. Those months are so busy, and we have so many demands on our police department that by requiring, the chief requires that everybody works the 4th, but they may have already had to work the weekend before or the weekend or their days off before because of special events. I do hope that we can work towards something so that we can give our police, fire, and our public works staff some time off during the summer, because right now with all the special events, which are great, super, but we're stretching our people to the point of fatigue. And so what you're saying is true, Chief, but you have to take it in concept of like the whole month.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
we had First
Speak
Friday
up.
the next day. So we're
Right.
staffing First Friday.
Mhm.
So turning back.
You gotta
Okay.
speak up.
All right, well, I know how to respond. Second thing is, just want to thank everybody for your concern with my son. I appreciate that. I appreciate the well wishes. And lastly, I'd just like to say congratulations, Jackie. It's been an absolute pleasure to get to know you. I'm blessed to have you as my friend. I wish you nothing but the best, and I can really say that the city's a better place from the work that you've done in your career. So, as a citizen, thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
That's all I have.
Ms. Keller? Just want to give a kudos to Bill and his staff. I received a minor complaint this morning that wasn't a minor complaint, they never are, to the person making the complaint. And there was almost immediate action taken. There was a solution within hours and a very happy citizen at the end of it. So just appreciate the fast service. We take wonderful care of people in the city, and thank you very much. We have great staff. Speaking of great staff, Jackie, there is no way that I can even imagine a city operating the day after you retire anywhere near the same way that we operated when you were here. So you will be very missed and not be forgotten, and we hope that you come back often, and that we don't drive you crazy with phone calls, because
I am happy. Anytime anybody needs me, just call me. I'm not changing my phone number.
And I have a feeling that there will be a lot of, how would Jackie have done this, happening in the next couple months.
That would be
So
so good.
thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
everything you've done.
Thanks, Lisa.
Mr. Brandon?
I have nothing, thank you.
Mr. Roy? Mr. Hellinger?
2 things.
Okay.
Actually, 3 things.
Okay.
So, one, I was definitely very glad to see that the Swifty on South Sandusky is now in renovation mode. And any improvement down there, now that we got rid of Leroy's mess, that's the next thing to go. And then just as we proceed north on Sandusky beyond there, Mr. Flaherty's failed popcorn place, can we have him take down that sign that's in tatters that's laying there, or can we
The
require
faded
code
sign, open
enforcement
sign?
on it? Yeah, just to,
Yes.
I mean,
George
that's.
Wednesday, I can just walk by and just.
Yeah, I know.
Oop, it all came down.
Yeah. So, I mean, that would be very helpful. It just that just looks atrocious. And it's looked that way for a period of time. And I keep meaning to mention something, and it doesn't. And last thing, Jackie, all I have to say to you is enjoy.
Thank you.
really.
I hope so. I feel pretty confident. Thank you, George.
I have a couple things. COSI is launching a STEM program in conjunction with a number of Central Ohio cities. I will be there Thursday representing the mayor of the city at their kickoff at 5:30 at COSI. And then, as you all know, we conducted a parking study, I think it was back in 2015, and we are now at the point, we did some short-term stuff, we're now at the point of looking at the midterm stuff. That parking group met recently, last couple of weeks or so, under the able coordination of our retired assistant city manager, Jackie Walker, who has been the staff lead on this. We've presented some information to the Parking and Safety Committee. At some point, we'll be bringing to council some mid-range proposals for changes in the parking system to improve efficiency. We just need to figure out the funding behind some of the cost items, and when we get that done, we'll present council proposal on that. And again, I will offer you, my congratulations.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure working with you. And I will tell you, retirement's a good thing.
Oh, good. All right. I haven't heard anybody complaining so far. But, Ken, I wanted to mention that Kyle is very good friends with the guy with COSI about that STEM program. He was already here before Kyle had his baby. I can't remember his name. Tom, do you remember his name?
No, from COSI.
Right, and they've already reached out to Taj Bakari at SWCI, and when Kyle gets back, the three of them are going to reconvene and figure out how they can partner with SWCI to really help Taj's STEM program. So just Kyle will work with you on that.
Great. And I've kind of brought it into the last minute.
Stephen
It
White.
looks like a really good initiative. Yeah, Stephen White.
Oh, yeah, and Stephen White was actually in our offices just right before Kyle left, so, yeah.
If you need a volunteer for any of that too, I'm super interested.
And the new assistant superintendent for the city of Delaware is a Dublin principal,
And he
former
knows
Dublin
Stephen
principal,
White, too.
and knows and is connected with this program. So
So they're gonna pull in the city
get
schools
the schools
too.
involved.
That's fantastic.
As well as SWCI.
And that is all I have, Madam Mayor.
Okay, when I was walking down to see the parade on Thursday, all the days run together, 131 Pennsylvania, the person in front of me was in a wheelchair, and there was a big gap in the sidewalk, not a gap, but a big lift. Could not get that wheelchair over it. So can we look at that? I'm pretty sure it was 131 Pennsylvania. So if you could do that, I'd appreciate it. Blake, thank you for following up with Mr. Henson.
Yes, you're welcome.
I appreciate that. And I give kudos to the city for 4th of July. It was fantastic. I had 6 events that day. I did make it to the Ostrander Parade and our parade and the symphony and the fireworks and 2 things for my own business, and it was just crazy but a good day. Life is good. And Jackie, we'll just miss you to death. Sorry.
Thank you. Thanks,
Sorry.
I'll miss you guys too.
And with that, I will look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned at 8:48.
All right. We made it through, didn't we?
Right to that.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank